As a way of introducing this film and our discussion thereof, on the cab ride back from the film house where we saw the film, Felix explained to me that in Judaism, there are certain Jews that believe heaven and hell are real, but they are the same place that everyone goes to. For the righteous man, heaven is being with Moses and talking about God all day. However, for the wicked, that very same scenario is hell. This film, Ready Player One, and the concept of the oasis, a virtual world created by author Ernest Cline, is in fact, for purposes of Chapo Trap House and this show and discussion, that very same concept. Heaven for our Virgil, Texas, and the deepest pit of hell for Matt Christman.
It's true.
I will pass. I'll now turn. I will turn to Virgil first.
Right, but let's explain what's going on. We have a lot of opinions and a lot of.
You're already violating.
God damn it! You're right. Fuck. Well, you explain it then.
Do you want it? Do you want the stick?
Explain
it. Well, we're all going to give our takes, right? Yes. Well, let me start by saying, Chris, at the top of the episode, can we add something like the Sega voice?
No.
Chapo.
Don't do
or
Explain the
maybe
fucking
something
thing.
like
Just stop doing this.
EA Games, Chapo everything. We Amber insists that we have our first ever Chapo talking stick, which is this VHS copy of Police Academy.
Matt suggested it.
I
Don't make me into
suggested
the
it.
school marm here.
Yes,
No,
I
it's not.
suggested
I thought
it.
it was your suggestion.
No, it was my
Okay.
suggestion. She
Okay,
rightly
what-
pointed out that this would be a problem.
Hello. What am I holding?
My
What am I
idea.
holding? Well, there you go.
You're
you go.
holding my
Violating again.
idea.
Violating it again.
Yeah, you're
Violating
holding my
it
idea.
again. Anyway, my take on the film. I came into it. I said to everyone, I think 7 or 8 out of 10. Solid 9. This was a fucking masterpiece. This was a beautiful, brilliant film. It was absolutely a trenchant satire of the liminal period in which we live, where we are converting to a digital state. And I would say it is an affirmation of humanity. I have very much more to say, but it's mostly in opposition to what some of my colleagues might say about it. So why don't I pass the Police Academy to who's next?
Me. All right. This was a cinematic apocalypse. Ready Player One is basically, it's just sounding the death knell for creativity, for the idea that you can make anything new, the idea that you are your imagination, that you are seeking something within yourself to express to others, that they may share in it, and that you can have a creative endeavor that is meaningful. It is a future of rote recitation. It is a cultural death, and it made me kind of want to jump in front of a train. That might have been because before the movie started, they had a little featurette with Ernst Cline showing off the actual fucking proton pack from Ghostbusters that he owns, and he looked exactly like me. He was, in fact, wearing the exact same blazer jeans combo I was, and there's the same stupid glasses and bad beard. And that didn't put me on the right path, certainly, and it's definitely committed me to doing a makeover. But anyway, I don't think that had too much impact on my correct assessment that the film is noxious and doom-laden and means that there is no future.
I think it's telling that our talking stick is in itself, in fact, an artifact of popular culture from the 1980s.
Which Matt recognized immediately.
One that I keep in a special place in my home because, of course, as much as we can pretend to critique it, we, of course, are all living within the ideology of 80s and 90s pop culture. My take on the movie is somewhat of a synthesis between Matt and Virgil. I was actually surprised coming out of it that I didn't hate it. I wasn't angry coming out of the movie. I had my problems. I don't think it was a perfect movie like Virgil did, but I wasn't viscerally repulsed by it. That being said, what I enjoyed about it is it did have a little bit of a Spielberg charm to it, just a little bit, even though if I found the references and overall tone of it to be rather leaden and laborious. What I liked about it, similar to what Virgil said, is I think it provides a compelling vision of where our society is going in the future, particularly dominated by giant Amazon and Google-like corporations, where people are essentially enslaved to virtual worlds. However, I don't think the movie provided nearly a grim enough portrait of what that reality is like. And to echo Matt, the idea that the Oasis is a world in which we let our imaginations run free, I find noxious because what the movie portrayed is, in fact, one in which our imaginations die completely. Felix.
Ernst Klein, more like Ernst Rome. Okay, so who should relate to this movie the most out of anyone? I don't know. Maybe the movie about a perfect boy whose greatest gift is going online and playing with his friends, having a great time, understanding the craft of being online better than anyone in the entire world, who has a pure spirit and only wants to protect the culture of online from interlopers, from monetizers, from other outsiders. Well, I did not find this film true to my experience. For one, when they were in the Oasis/Matrix, the voluntary Matrix, the
freemium matrix.
There was none of the internet that I recognize. There was no racism. There was no sort of manifestation of Instagram where guys from Gulf states just screamed at the women, you're so beautiful. No nudity, no porn, no Pornhub. Even though the main character is the type of guy who would spend $300 real life dollars to win Kendra Lust's Fuck a Fan contest.
There was a brothel.
There was a brothel.
No, they implied that was this place where people went to make love virtually.
Yeah, not to do pile drivers, which is also sexual and people don't know. But no, it's there is no problem with making a pop culture laden product. The greatest creator of all time, Hideo Kojima, his works, Metal Gear Solid, are filled with references to his favorite films and cultural artifacts. But of course, Hideo Kojima is one of the smartest people to ever live, ever, and created something beautiful and original with a totally novel plot. And not just this, which is masturbatory, and like the thesis of it is, in the future, one or two companies will control everything. People will be so beaten down that their only escape will be microtransactions. But, the CEOs aren't real fans, and that's what's going to make them lose. Moronic. And they did not use their Columbus, Ohio setting to its highest estimate. At the beginning of the movie, we do not hear, "Hey, welcome to Street Fight."
All right, Amber.
We skipped over the theater experience part, which I think we have to throw in because Will is also very big on this. I fucking hate Alamo Drafthouse. They're stupid snitch ass fucking. They're like, it's not enough that they're like, you'll receive one warning and then you'll be kicked out. They also say, if you have someone to report, they're fucking snitch-ass movie theater. They serve shitty food. Let's never go there again. I hate them. The screen quality is even good. There was a slice in the screen, and it was shuddering the whole time anyway. Fuck that business.
May I make one quick comment on the Alamo Drafthouse experience? They're actually going against the express wishes of director Steven Spielberg, who in press about the movie said, I want people when they see this movie to say, oh, that's blank, or I get that at the screen. So Alamo Drafthouse.
Why would you want that?
Well, shut up. Yes, exactly. Why would you want someone interjecting?
Good point.
Anyway, I believe in quiet theaters, but this is not a Bergman festival. It's exactly the kind of movie where there's supposed to be noises. And even if like a usher had to go in and be like, hey, I'm sorry, could you be a little quiet? It's not the same thing as, by the way, you will be ejected. Also, your fellow patrons are going to be snitching on you.
This was also, for my experience, not a quiet theater. I was sitting next to Matt, who every 5 minutes or so was interjecting, this is bullshit, god damn it.
That's not true.
Okay.
I just made some noises.
But my impressions of the movie, I didn't know actually what to pick from this, but as soon as I knew we were seeing it, I went back to Mark Fisher, who wrote a lot about nostalgia, sort of current late capitalist malaise of nostalgia. And there's something about the aesthetic futurism that was really interesting. And this is from, you can actually find the excerpt on The Quietus, but in it he paraphrases a lot of Jameson, but he has this moment where he says, where is the 21st century equivalent of Kraftwerk? If Kraftwerk's music came out of a casual intolerance for the already established, then the present moment is marked by an extraordinary accommodation towards the past. More than that, the very distinction between past and present is breaking down. In 1981, the 1960s seemed much further away than they do today. Since then, cultural time has folded back on itself, and the impression of linear development has given way to a strange simultaneity. So I thought it was kind of they tried to do what they did with Blade Runner, where they tried to sort of create a futuristic world that was dystopian, but also had like the aesthetic of a memorable nostalgia. For Blade Runner, it was noir. for this movie. It was like the cool ladies fun Spielberg kids movie, which is also super weird because that means Spielberg is literally imitating himself.
Yes, he is.
Second of all, it really was fine. I agree with Will that the strong points of it did have a human touch. And as sad as it is to say, it is very rare at this point that you can be like, wow, they wrote that movie. It was not produced by an algorithm. Like this had some Spielberg charm, and it was cute and fun and somewhat ambitious in terms of writing. Obviously, at the end, I don't care if I'm spoiling it for you. Nothing changes. There's still a horrible, faceless capitalist, organization that's unaccountable to anyone, but the good guys get it. And our hero gets a nice loft with a bunch of vintage games, and we don't know anything
And a
about the
girlfriend.
dystopian outside world. But I thought it was cute and, fine. However, it did climax in a war scenario in the game. And I leaned over to Felix at the time, and I was like, can you imagine how insufferable the veterans of that war would be?
Yeah, I was thinking when you said that, I was thinking about the VFW where they're all there, and instead of being like, "We lost a lot of good men that day," they're like, "I get the reference, sir. +1."
But yeah, the casting was charming. It was one of the few sort of situations where I thought the kind of hamminess of it had some charm. I think people are really moving away from this ridiculous, gritty Batman style filmmaking, and they're acknowledging that these things are entertainment. They're not fucking War and Peace, so there's no more like rubbing the actual film through grime before like putting it on the projector. It was cute. It was fine.
Okay. We're going to get into a deeper conversation of the film. I'd like to go through the plot and then talk about some other possibilities. Back to Ready Player One.
yeah,
though.
yeah.
But-
Spoon feeding people.
But what's interesting about what you just said and like the trailers going into this movie, and as we were talking about the algorithm now that writes movies based on sort of what is found to be sort of palatable references that we all kind of share and things that we like, or that are sort of taken and reassembled into other things that we like. The question I think this movie offers is like, is it too accurate of the world we live in which we are all embedded in this pop cultural algorithm? Does it cut too close to the bone in its portrayal of this world, or does it essentially accept it and present it in an acceptable way?
Well, that's the thing. I viewed it as a realistic film, unlike this other Hollywood pablum. It was a film about the very social and economic issues that we're dealing with right now. And one thing I want to point out is that there is an established fungibility between meat space money and the digital coins that you can collect in Oasis, because our main character Wade lives with, I believe, his aunt and his aunt's abusive boyfriend, who gambles away most of their money playing a video game. And as well, you can mine money through the game.
Also very important is the idea that the evil corporation in this movie that is very much like, Amazon or Google or whatever that is vying to control the gaming world of Oasis can buy up your debt and then press you into service in these sort of digital virtual
There's
mines.
indentured
Let's
services.
Well, let's get to that later, because that is actually a very key point in the film. In the long and the short of it is, so there is a competition to get the $500 billion. IOI wants to be the big tech monopoly, and it's a game, so they have recruited an army to play the game in order to get the money, which makes perfect sense. Obviously, if there's a $500 billion bounty, it would make sense to invest money towards it. And competing against them are what's called, what were they called again?
Gunters.
Gunters, right. Egg
hunters.
right. Who are basically just freelancers, including our hero. And the first big competition there is a virtual race through a New York City that has quite a few interesting references to cinema there. And this race has been going on for 5 years, and nobody has ever finished it. And I thought that was an amazing sequence, by the way, that fucking race sequence.
Not sucked.
And our hero goes back into the archives. The man who created Oasis left behind a huge archive of every moment in his life, basically. And people will obsessively study it to try to figure out hints to unlock the secret of the Easter egg. And our hero hears something from a meeting between the creator and the creator's collaborator, which was kind of like a Steve Jobs and Wozniak kind of situation, and realizes, oh wait, what you have to do at the race is not go forward, just go backward into this wall, which as a gamer, I can tell you would have been figured out by the second iteration.
I thought that was a very obvious clue in the idea that this would be some
yeah,
sort
but
of secret.
gamers think they're smart, and like to think they're smart, and this entire movie was designed to flatter their ego.
Yes.
No, but gamers explore and fuck around, and they do shit like that.
Like things that flatter you.
Yes.
We all like things that
We
flatter.
do. We
But
do.
this specifically flattered you. It said, you're very smart and very good, and all of
You
the
would have known
crap
this
that you
immediately.
watched means
You know why this
something.
movie flattered me? Because as soon as I saw his best friend, I'm like, that's a woman.
Oh,
and
right.
I turned to Felix and I said so. He's like, oh yeah, definitely. And then it was Lena Waithe, who's very charming, and also my wife. And I have to say, like, I'm very critical of these kind of shallow diversity and representational arguments, but like, as far as that stuff went, like, I think this might be the first time I've ever seen like a fully protagonistic, like, butch woman who wasn't
That's
like
true.
a tomboy,
Yeah.
but who's like an actual like butch lesbian.
Oh,
And I like that. She was a
So in-
friendly BFF lesbian.
Sorry, but to your point about like representation, I thought an interesting thing we noticed
Thank
coming out.
God
of
they
the
had
movie-
Asians.
They did have Asian gamers. That's important.
Yes.
However, in the universe, like I said, that is all this one guy's head. Halliday, aka Ernest Cline. Out of all
AKA
the
Spielberg.
references, it was pretty much entirely devoid of black culture
Yeah.
in
Yep.
every respect, other than maybe
I mean, that's Spielberg.
one reference to Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Yes.
That was it. It was all largely the John Hughes has more references than
John
like any-
Hughes.
yeah.
Whose entire ethos is white flight,
Well-
reactionary
Yeah,
suburban culture.
Yeah, but this is a function of Klein and Spielberg and their peccadillos and their realm of knowledge. That's why, yes, it is kind of an error on their part that all of the references are the 80s. But come on, it's a film made in 2017 by Steven Spielberg. Yes, they didn't go out and hypothesize 2020s pop culture because that would not have made sense to the cinema goer.
You're going to make an entire movie that its backbone is 80s pop culture. There's no Coming to America. Just put in the entirety of Eddie Murphy Raw in the background.
Where's that red leather suit?
But honestly, like, if Coming to America was one of the biggest comedies of the 1980s and one of the most resonant, there was just one
Well,
movie.
yeah,
you could do-
Beverly
there was no
Hills
there.
Cop.
Caddyshack reference. There's no trading places.
No, but it's
But there
just
are
an
50
hegemonic.
references to John fucking Hughes.
Yeah, it's hegemonic white culture, and the thing is, you say, "Oh, that's their specific limitation," but they have the money and the access, and they created the thing, and that is the hell future we live in, where the few who have had a legacy handed to them,
They get to decide what canon is.
yes,
And
we have to live in
canon
it.
is always determined by the ruling class, though I am an advocate for canon. This isn't canon the way you think of it, Virgil. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know. I know what I think canon is. Do you know what canon is?
Don Cannon,
the
legendary
academic-
producer.
The academic concept of canon is like, okay, should we teach a bunch of, for example, the phrase they usually use is dead white men.
Oh, yeah. that
And
kinda
the
canon.
argument in favor of it is that is in fact the most materialist way of teaching things, because those have historically been the most influential voices due to capitalism and where it erupted and who got to be in charge of what and whatever. And also there's the pedagogical sort of Marxist argument for it, because it creates a baseline. It's not like it's like everyone is learning the same thing, so they're dealing with the same sort of body of knowledge. But when one person is in charge of determining what canon is, it's going to be so myopic and just going to be their favorite shit, which is absolutely ridiculous, because by the 80s, black culture was incredibly ascendant and has been ever since.
To your point, though, the feeling of the Halliday character, which I think is a stand-in for Ernest Cline, like, and the idea that all of the pop cultural minutia that gave him pleasure now has to be studied. There's a whole field of study called the Hallidayology in the movie.
No.
Yes, there
Yes.
was.
Oh,
There's
Lord.
the people in like
Yes.
in suits
Yeah.
who study like his every movie he's ever seen, everything he's ever liked, to unlock the keys to like this whole new
Which
realm.
is, by the way, not how like sort of intellectual thought works either. Like, I'm a Marxist. I don't just sit around and I'm not a historian of Marx's life.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
However-
I misunderstood. I thought you meant in real world. There's
No,
a
no,
holiday
no,
there.
no.
Thank God.
In the
Okay.
film itself. However,
Yeah.
but that gave me what it brought to mind for me. The Oasis, a world created by this guy, where the key to everything is just his like fanboy, geekgasms, is like the Twilight Zone episode that was later satirized by The Simpsons, in which a boy has godlike control over everything, and everyone has to think all the time, "We like this part."
Wait. I just thought of something.
That's
I
actually
just
from
thought of
Twilight Zone
something.
originally.
We are not, hallowed about our favorite things, because I 100% love The Simpsons' take on The Shining.
Yeah. The Shinning.
It was great.
It was
You want to
funny.
get sued? Yeah, it was fantastic. It was self-referential. It was what that act was trying to do.
Well, then
It's just none of it. It was just dead reference.
Well, now hang on a second. How do you draw
Remember
a
this?
distinction from that
Remember
criticism?
this?
Yeah.
How do
Remember
you
this?
criticize this, but then also like The Simpsons, which had an all-white writers' room that was writing on what they understood popular culture to be in the 20th century,
No, because-
which was the Twilight Zone,
Because-
which was
Yeah.
Because they weren't saying like Ready Player One is billed as like this is the definitive look through our culture.
Exactly.
And The Simpsons was never doing
Exactly.
that.
It was never-
I'm not
exactly.
familiar with the
Exactly.
billing of this film. I just watched it because it was a goofy, stupid film.
Simpsons
then-
is a product of pop culture. Ready Player One claims to be an embodiment of all
It
popular
claims
culture.
to be an anthology. It takes
I'm
on the
not
role of,
familiar-
and there's nothing wrong. By the way, there's nothing wrong with liking all like one segment of pop culture. You tend to grow attached to what you're exposed to. Like, it's literally fine.
This is Spielberg.
But to claim to be anthological about it is ridiculous, and that's what we're objecting to. We love all the shit that The Simpsons does with their childhood.
I would object to that too. I've not followed the buzz, I believe the industry term about it. I'm just reacting to the film itself and the ideas
As am
expressed
I.
by it.
As am I.
But one thing I do want to bring up is in that racing scene. That's where our meet cute happens with Artemis, the real gamer girl, who is also pursuing the key. And boy, she is a little sasspot.
Well, here's the thing.
Virgil, if you really loved that racing scene, here's something that's absolutely gonna fucking blow you away.
Don't say speed.
It's the cinematics from the game Twisted Metal in 1998.
yeah, that's that. I mean, that's the thing. The CGI looks like dog shit. All the CGI looks bad.
Okay,
I thought
but
it
by the way,
looked good, but okay.
her character gets a lot of like depth, and I think they try and do the tough girl thing, but like they don't overplay it. It's fine. She's fine. It's cute. However, her apparent flaw is that she
Yeah.
has a birthmark, which
Yeah,
is somehow
yeah.
charming
Okay,
and
so
makes her
let's-
cuter.
so this is-
no, not done.
I'm sorry.
But she is actually like a radical who's trying to bring down this
Yes.
horrible. She's trying to bring down this horrible capitalist institution that like apparently killed her father in the gaming mines. And however, how does it end? She gets to be on the board.
So
Yes.
it killed her.
She gets to be one of the head capitalists.
Yep.
She's
killed
a
her
benevolent
father
capitalist.
because her father was basically an HB1 worker who came over with all and who started working for IOI with all these promises, and then they reduced his salary. They forced him to live in company housing. They said that part.
Yeah.
And they basically put him in debt bondage till they fucking killed him.
And then, as Amber says, his vengeful daughter gets her revenge by just taking over Oasis with her boyfriend.
She's like, I want to stop these people, and he's like, I think that this game should be accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
And they're unified on those two things as if those are similar political weight.
So they meet on the line, and she's a gorgeous, shitty-looking CGI avatar that he's nevertheless attracted to. I'm not going to get a boner for one of those people. They look like a fucking non-playable character from a game from Sega Dreamcast.
Okay.
The eyeballs.
Okay.
The eyeballs
you
are
didn't like her-
very insectile.
You didn't like her
Large
attitude?
eyes.
I didn't. Well, she's a sparky, tough girl.
I
as
didn't.
Amber said.
I don't want to belabor it, but she absolutely had Diva's attitude.
But
She was a Twitch. He said he recognizes her from her Twitch stream.
all right.
And
Which, by the way, doesn't make sense. There wouldn't be Twitch in
I
this
know,
world.
right? That's something they shoehorned in.
That's,
but
a little wink.
But he
That's a little
falls in
wink.
love
It
with
is a
her.
wink.
He falls in love with her just over a few days on computers, and she points out to him very smartly, "Hey, you idiot! You don't know who I am. I could be a guy. I could
Yeah.
be anything. I could look completely different." And she's like, kind of like defensive, and you're like, "This is an interesting conflict because
Yes.
we're trying to resolve the difference between the fantasy world and reality." This kind of issue of this beautiful woman I'm falling in love with online and a real woman that I might have to meet one day, that's an interesting conflict.
I really
But she
would have liked this movie if she was actually like 300
Well, that's
pounds.
what I'm saying.
Or,
They meet
or
her,
a guy
he
or
meets her,
45.
He meets her, and she's just basically as cute as her avatar, but she has a birthmark on her face.
yeah,
birthmark is putting it like drastically.
Yes.
It looks like she's slightly more tan on one part of
It
her
looks like
forehead.
she walked into a wall.
Well,
It's,
hold
it's-
on.
It's like a charming, mysterious,
Yeah.
cute thing.
I just a little bit to defend this movie, then something else. I thought that all my friends I play Fortnite with were girls. They thought I was a girl. They thought, then we all met, and it's like, well, if you're a guy, I'm a guy, and it was beautiful, and that's sort of true to life. But the other thing is, again, referencing another creator who loves his movies, loves his pop culture, also created a spunky redheaded character, but did it with way more depth. I'm talking about Meryl in Hideo Kojima's Metal Gear Solid 1. A much deeper character, explored that spunky, fiery redhead type way better, way deeper.
Yes, the personality type of having red hair.
yeah.
That is-
Thank you for breaking that stereotype, Felix, of the gamer guy.
I'm just saying they both had red hair, but Kojima subverted it, whereas Ernest Rome played into it.
I agree with both of you guys that was a huge missed opportunity. Obviously, the film had a different agenda, but I enjoyed the concept here, and I would like to see it explored further because I think the general idea that here's where we're going to, something that resembles the Oasis, that it's going to be a digital space where everything we hear, everything we see, and yes, everything we feel is identical to these experiences in the real world. That will be the future. And yes, what Wade says early in the film is, this guy is my best friend, and I've never met him. I only know him as this orc guy. Yet I have still made a human connection with him. I consider that a very hopeful idea. And you find that repellent?
The idea
We're
of
literally all here
the
because of
idea
online.
of being a shitty CGI asshole all the time is very dispiriting to me. I'm sorry, especially since this is a very sanitized version of online. We've talked about this. Virgil showed me this nightmare, and he said, "This is the future," and it made me want to kill myself.
I showed him several months ago. I showed him VR chat.
Yeah, it's a real thing that you can go into, and it is a virtual reality chat room. And what it was a few people, and yeah, they were all like, it was like Ready Player One. They were just like their favorite characters.
Yep.
Goku.
Anime girl with
anime
big tits.
lady with the titties.
Knuckles.
Other anime lady with breasts. Another lady with also even larger breasts somehow. And then Goku's friend, vegetable farmer.
Yeah.
And also 500 tiny guys doing African guy accents,
Knuckles.
yelling at people, just being racist. And that part is not in here. The trolls, the monstrous assholes just
Well, there are
being-
probably mods.
Well, that's the thing. That raises questions that it doesn't go into either.
But
But
also, Matt, again, like, we kind of already have that. It's just not as immersive. We are literally all only friends and all only in this room right now because of online culture.
yeah, I know.
It's been hugely influential on our comedy. It's been artistically influential on us. The medium has produced
That's why it's
the
sad.
genre that we're operating
That's
in.
why it's sad. It
That's
feels
why
like
you
a
hate
trap.
yourself.
It's just
Why
Ready
is it-
Player One makes it feel like a trap.
Why
It
is-
makes it feel like if anybody has read the Edward Gorey book, the
Friends with Richard Scarry.
no Edward Gorey, who also did children's book,
Yeah.
and he did one called The Couch. What is it called? And it's about some gay 90s debauched aristocrats who go from sensual adventure to sensual adventure. And then at the end, they all sit on this sexy couch that they've heard is just amazing, and the couch eats them. That feels like Ready Player One feels like the couch at the end of that story.
So what I said to Matt a few months ago was that this is VR chat. This is going to be the future. Sorry, bitch. You got to fucking be on it. That's going to be where all of your commerce and interaction and your posts go, all your feedback go. If we had made this show, this podcast 5 years from now, we would have all met there. You would have met. You would have been a big anime lady. I would have been a Knuckles. Will would have just been Will for some reason. Felix would have been Solid Snake. We all would have hung
Big
out
Boss.
there and been like, Big Boss. Okay, who would you have been, Amber?
I wouldn't be on it.
And this is what gave me hope. And I assume you would be opposed to this, but let me sketch this out. This is in the future, some 30 years from now. And right now, today, there's 7.5 billion people in the world, pushing 8 billion. Many of whom live in extreme poverty. We have grotesque inequality. Even within developed countries, we have failing social security state, failing infrastructure. Even in the richest countries in the world, why is it so repugnant? The idea that there would be a future where everyone has an equal opportunity, ostensibly, to experience a world where it sounds the same, it looks the same, it feels the same. Everything that is only the domain of the very wealthy right now is accessible to everyone. They show in that opening montage where they describe to you Oasis, you can climb Mount Everest. You can go on this exclusive
What you're saying
beach
is
in Hawaii.
antithetical to the actual movie's lesson,
Even
which is like the real world is the only thing that's real.
That's true. That's the message of the film.
Even in an egalitarian world, I'm sorry, not everyone is going to get to climb Mount Everest. Not everyone is going to go on the exclusive Black Sands beach of Hawaii.
Here is the question that is posited by this discussion and the film itself. Is the world that we now live in, and I think the film is, in fact, a pretty good facsimile of a world that already exists. It already reflects, I think, pretty much the culture that we currently live in, as mediated by digital mediums and pop culture references. Here's the question. Is there potential there to liberate ourselves? Taking aside the harsh realities of the world we live in, does this technology and the shared experience of these things, is it a way out of the world we live in, or is that, in fact, impossible because it is so embedded in the ideology and actual infrastructure and of capitalism and the world we currently live in?
You're so classic Krusty right now. It's like you're really going on.
Well, I obviously...
I'm sorry.
Well, it depends on what you mean by crisis.
Well, my point is I'm neutral on the issue of who is in control here. I am obviously opposed to what the film exposes to us about who the tech gods are, but I am endorsing the technology itself.
I
And
am a
that's my
Marxist, and
distinction.
I have to say I agree with Virgil on this. I think that technology is not neutral, though, and it needs to be utilized by the people.
But this movie does not posit any connection between this online economy and the real economy and reality.
It does not, but it is a movie made by and for liberals. But I will say this. If this is the direction liberals are moving in kind of a cultural political context, I'm fine with that, because I think if this was made 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, the bad guy would not be a corporation, it would be the government.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that they don't understand the relationship between the state and capitalism. The police show up to save them.
Yeah.
Like it's a bit strange. But I don't know. I think it indicates a kind of shifting of consciousness even among liberals, where they're like, hey, the bad guys are the people with all of the money, and not, whatever, authority as a vague concept.
That's good. It's a good vector to point towards, but I do feel like it is so severs the connection between the economy of the online, because it says you need to come back to the real world. Like that's the big message of the film, which counteracts your idea that it's some sort of manifesto for a future Matrix. The whole point of the movie is you need to be in the real world, and the real world is what's real, and you need to not be in fantasies, and you need to be grounded. In fact, one of the things they do, spoiler alert, when they take over the Oasis, is shut it down 2 days a week so that people be real. But none of that being real does not mean, because they posit the Oasis early in the film as an escape from the problems of the 21st century that nobody could solve. They say, we stopped trying to solve problems, we started trying to escape them. And then he says, no, we need to go back to reality. But the thing that comes after that, okay, I'm back here, everything sucks, I live in the middle of a fucking apocalypse, what am I going to do about it? That's elided. Him and his girlfriend are making out in a fucking loft with the Klingon battle dagger on the wall.
It's called the backleth.
Okay.
Because the film was 2.5 hours long. If you wanted to go over the entire political economy of the world in 2045,
I think you actually
it would have
could
been 8
done
hours
it in
long.
5 minutes. I don't know. I think it's very convoluted. It doesn't have a kind of political foundation to it. But I like that the bad guys are capitalists, and I don't think it's the worst instinct. And also, like, whatever, they're libs, they're learning.
Here are the things.
Watch them crawl.
Towards the end of the film that I found to be the most hopeful and beautiful sentiments of the film. And I don't know why you're laughing, Chris. No responses from Chris, please, going forward. Dock his pay. At the end of the film, it becomes so the final challenge is to play a classic Atari game adventure and to find the one Easter egg in that game, which the film tells you is the very first Easter egg inserted in a video game. And our Wade has done a classic dystopian hero thing, which is transmit to everyone and say, hey, the bad guys are here. You all have to come help me right now, which they do, and they come in droves, and it's a big, big fight. And Wade, by some deus ex machina, is the last one standing against IOI to actually play the game. And you see everyone in the world watching him, including the technicians who work for the bad guy, because they are just enthralled that someone is going to solve this 5-year-old mystery, and he does it very calmly. He finishes the game. And that, to me, shows what gaming is as a shared experience that can inspire a great number of people. People, the idea of Twitch a year ago was absurd to pretty much everyone. Who the hell would watch someone play video games? Let's Plays or things like that. Now it is increasingly becoming the dominant culture.
Okay.
More people under the age of 20 are interested in esports than P-sports.
And that's why they're all going. No, never mind. That's true. But what those people are actually gathering around to watch, literally, forgetting the whatever they're watching virtually, the actual thing they're watching is the transfer of corporate stock from one party to another.
I'm sorry to interject here, but I feel like this episode has just become a replay of the Virgil Matt gaming debate.
No, I have one thing to say. This is not about gaming. This is about another thing he said. He's talking about how, spoiler alert, at the end of the game, he has to find the Easter egg, the first Easter egg ever in a video game, which was an Atari game called Adventure. And what was it? The guy, he goes back, and the Easter egg is the name of the guy who designed the game.
Yes.
It was literally a self-suck. And this movie is a Spielberg self-suck. That's why he made it. It was.
Is that so absurd?
Come on.
Yes, it is.
No.
It's
actually it's the mark of okay.
Isn't that
You're going to shut up for just a second and stifle your laughter, but it is an artist's signature. And I actually think there was something about that. It in a very materialist way, and someone made this. There was a worker behind this.
Yeah. And Spielberg is saying, I made your mind. I made the pop culture of the last 30 to 40 years. You live in my brain, and then you can't escape.
That worker who made that Easter egg was a programmer who did not own that company and was not authorized to do that. And the first Easter eggs were unauthorized.
It's like someone. It's like a mason putting their name on the brick or something.
Yeah, and it's got turned into over the last 40 years into a commodity.
It has, but that's not a negative sentiment. Putting your name on something is not.
No,
is
him
not negative.
originally doing
and
it,
if anything, it in some way like makes labor more visible.
I agree with that, but I don't think that's what Spielberg found responding to. I think Spielberg is responding to the self-reference. Why else would you make a movie where one of the scenes involves you rendering a CGI version of the T-Rex from one of your other movies? Why would you do that? And a half a dozen movies that you directed or produced or had some hand in. That is self-suckery.
Movies never have gratuitous content to encourage people to watch them.
Well, Spielberg's a narcissist, and that's fine, but it's not that bad. Anyway, literally, the movie, it was fine. It was fun. It was convoluted. It's very lib, but
Guys,
that guy's a
Can I
capitalist.
just say one more thing on that?
right, let's
vein?
all have one last thing to
on
say.
that vein, Billy, on what Amber just said, and I thought, okay, call me schmaltzy or stupid or whatever, but I thought this was a moving sentiment. Was the one of the final scenes where Wade finally meets Halliday, and Wade he's done everything. He's plowed through all of the goddamn fucking 80s references, and he's just with Halliday in what appears to be Halliday's childhood home, and you see a young version of Halliday playing an Atari game. And Halliday is that alpha male we were talking about earlier who was moping around and not making eye contact, standing in a proud hunched pose. And one of the last things Halliday says after giving Wade the keys to the kingdom was just, "Thanks for playing my game." And in my mind, what is essential about art is that it is a communion between artists and consumers. And that if you can't acknowledge that communion exists in gaming, perhaps even in a higher sense, then I don't know what to say.
Okay. Shall we end with our closing thoughts? Virgil, was that your closing thought on the film?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Closing thoughts on the film, and I think the question in general is: can we escape or liberate ourselves through pop culture references and video games?
I'm going to let Matt go, otherwise.
No, I want to go last.
No, you don't get to go last. I'm
What?
sorry.
I want to go last.
No.
It's cool.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you want to do it.
Oh, so you get to do it.
Yes, I do.
I love
God
how we're
damn
now
it.
living Joss Whedon dialogue.
It just, all right. The movie felt like living in the fucking carcass of a dead whale on a beach. It felt like it's the end. It felt like no one has any more ideas. Nobody can monetize anything that doesn't have a suite of previous intellectual property behind it you can point to get funding, because you can argue, hey, people recognize X, Y, and Z, and so they'll pay to see X, Y, and Z. And that we live in this sterility where all we even have, even the masters who actually did create stuff, Spielberg being one of them, are now in a sort of a winter of their life where they're just inwardly facing and sort of tending the garden of their pop culture legacy. There's no newness, and the idea that any kind of communal expression or solidarity that is found in a virtual realm can then transfer to a real one. I mean, the film doesn't make that argument, and I don't know anything in the non-film world that would support that argument either.
Yeah. Well, as I was saying before, it's cute. It has a human touch. It was written, which is more than you can say for half the movies out there right now. It's politically incredibly convoluted, which is why it is such an interesting artifact of this moment in time. And I'm not talking about gaming or the internet. I'm talking about art's relationship to politics and what art tries to do, especially mass culture. I'm not saying popular culture. I'm saying mass culture, something produced for the masses. How that relates to the actual political realities of our world. And I think the fact that they're trying to produce something semi-recognizable is a good sign.
I would say, along similar to those lines, I thought the movie was almost too good at kind of creating an uncanny reflection of a world that we already live in. And I think we need to ask ourselves, is that the world that we want to be living in? Is this the culture that we want for ourselves? If we like the movie, does that mean that we like the culture that we currently live in? And I think the movie was a good reflection of that. However, what I find disturbing about it and the culture we currently live in is this idea that there is no escape from the past. And to get back to what Amber said, reading from Mark Fisher, is that we are just essentially reproducing ourselves and reconsuming ourselves through more and more references and remixes of culture that has already come before us. There were movie characters making movie references from other movies in this movie about them. I don't know how to accurately summarize all that up, but I think it is very of the moment, and how we react to it, I think essentially is a good Rorschach test for how comfortable we feel with the culture of the internet and pop culture in general at the moment.
I just want to say, to add to that, one more quote from a little guy named Karl Marx. The tradition of all dead generations weighs like a nightmare on the brains of the living. Felix?
Anyway,
Fortune cookie ass.
yeah, dude. This is a quote from Black Sabbath. They said, "I am Iron Man." Anyway, look, I'm gonna be honest. I have a cold. My body's really hot. I haven't gone to the gym in a week. Terrible mood. I don't have to watch this fucking. Didn't really pay attention to the movie. I'm gonna be honest. It's pretty boring. Not good. But I was thinking about if I made the true experience of what it's like to travel through the internet through my cultural references. And the like Steve Jobs guy is Dan Quinn. And you have to find 3 keys from Dan Quinn's life. You have to go to Juanita's, where he knocked out 5 guys at once. 4 assholes and 1 asshole from New York. You have to find Boogaloo, who drew him as the bad boy. And there are all these little clues you have to go through. Like they're like, one of the riddles is like, smoke this weed the best way you know how. And it's like, wait a minute, Dan Quinn never bought the most expensive weed. He bought mids and put orange peels in it, as he said, and can he beat 9? And you have to go through the real internet culture, which is making yourself so like geometrically growing your mental illness every year by finding new insane guys with your friends. You and your friends making each other more insane. There's no, it's just me and my friends online stumbling through Dan Quinn, Demonius X, Mikey Miles, all of our guys until we find the end, which is Lou Holtz. And we'd beat him.
Wouldn't it be a beautiful vision if we were in charge of the Oasis and the only avatars any user could have were either of Salman, Mr. Danny, or all of the other beautiful Persian bodybuilders?
Oh my God.
That's the only thing that we could reference or look like in our new future online utopia.
Oh, and
Who would want to look like anything else?
Felix and the Hudson brothers should have had a cameo in this movie as guys who watch the main character's story and go, last time I ever cry about a hoe.
Yeah, there should, in the real one, there's a Fortnite planet where me and all my Fortnite friends live on.
There would be and there will be in the future.
And you can't escape it because of the mental illness field.
Again, last thought, you cannot escape it. You cannot escape pop culture references. You cannot escape the culture and ideology that you live in and imbibe. Maybe there's a way out if you find an Easter egg. If you find it, let us know.
The future.
This is Chapo Trap
Fiat
House.
Lux.